Welcome back to Rad City Resin. Spooky season's officially in the books, so of course I took advantage by stopping by my local Michael's to take a look at the Halloween clearance items and, to get some inspiration for the upcoming holiday season. Hit that subscribe button, send this video to a friend, and let's go shopping. My first stop is always the clearance area. I found some really fun resin dyes and pigments and also like a super cheap bangle silicone mold. I think this is going to make for some really excellent presents for the holidays, and I have lots of ladies in my life that I think would appreciate them. So we'll see what I do with that in a future video. I also picked up these 2 packs of coaster blanks. I'm so excited about the project I have in mind here. I'm going to pair them with this Mod Podge transfer medium. So stick around for that project later in the video. I found these super cute Halloween ice cube trays. My home is pretty much decorated with spooky items all year long, so these will definitely be used soon. I just might not do it on video. I have a very specific plan for these bangles, and I'm really hoping that it works, so hopefully we'll see them in a video soon too. And my favorite find of the day were these soap molds. I'm completely obsessed with bees, so I think these are going to make an absolutely perfect springtime project. I don't know what that project is yet, but I think it's going to be adorable. So for my project this week, I really wanted to design some fun coasters, and I wanted them to kind of look like a vintage postcard or vintage Christmas card, something that you might find at a thrift shop. And of course, I really wanted them to be quirky and fun, so I knew that I needed to add some quotes from my family's favorite Christmas movie, Christmas Vacation. My husband and I are completely obsessed with this movie, and we will watch it literally on repeat. So I used Canva to make my designs. I have a pro plan, but you can actually make something pretty similar for free. I started with a 4x4 canvas, then used the elements section to find pretty vintage Christmassy images. I added in my quotes, and I just kind of played around with the design until I liked the composition. I exported those photos, then added them all to a single document to make it easier to print. I made sure each image remained 3.5 inches by 3.5 inches, then flipped each one horizontally to create a mirror image. I needed to print them out this way so that when I apply them to my tile, the image will appear face up. You'll see what I mean here in a moment. Here's my printed design, and I cut this into fourths and then just set it aside. Just for the record, some tutorials will tell you that you absolutely have to use laser printed design for this method, but you can absolutely do this with a standard inkjet printer. I laid out my tiles and opened my bottle of Mod Podge transfer medium. There's so many different types of gel medium you can use for this. This just happened to be the cheapest thing at Michael's. So I applied a good dollop onto each tile. And when doing this technique, you want to have a thick layer on the tile. Depending on the finish that you want, you can really smooth this out. But again, I wanted an effect of like a set of Christmas cards that you found in your grandparents' attic. So I didn't really worry too much about making it super smooth. Next, I grabbed my prints, then centered them on the tile very carefully. I made sure to smooth it out really well so there were no bubbles and that all of the inked sections of the prints were coated in the medium. Now this next part is the absolute hardest part. I had to set it aside for at least 12 hours. 24 hours is best, but I couldn't wait that long. The next day, I laid my tiles out again, then sprayed them very thoroughly with water. Honestly, using a wet sponge may have been a better move here, but this is the way I went. I gave the paper a chance to kind of soak in the water, then carefully started to rub away the paper. This is just regular old copy paper, so it disintegrated very quickly, but don't be afraid to add a little more water if you have to. This part is kind of tricky because you have to use enough pressure and friction to get the paper off, but if you go too hard, you'll pull the ink out of the medium, as you can see here. This one didn't end up working so well, so ultimately I ended up scrapping it. These things happen, and if all else fails, paint over it and try again. It probably would have worked better if I had had a more saturated image. Once I got as much paper off as I could, I taped off the edges using masking tape. This isn't really necessary. You could just, put a flood of the UV resin on top and then smooth it out with a tool, like a dotting tool or a toothpick, and then wipe away anything that pours over the side. But I really wanted a nice thick layer of resin on top. So I filled the masking tape frame with Let's Resin UV resin, the crystal clear hard type, then very carefully smoothed it out. I used a lighter to pop any bubbles that rose to the surface. I cured this for a while, making sure to position my light at different angles to really get a hard cure. I recommend doing this in thinner layers, but I like to live dangerously. That's not true at all. I repeated this process with the other 2 coasters. Then, once everything was fully cured, I used my deburring tool to trim away any sharp edges. I sanded down the edges using a rough nail file and eventually took it outside and used my rotary tool to really smooth it down to my liking. I was so happy with how they turned out. I really love the quirkiness, the quotes. It makes me laugh every time I see them, and it really just makes me want to drink eggnog and put a billion lights on my house. Thank you so much for joining me this week. If you found this tutorial fun and useful, please hit that subscribe button and join me for even more tutorials. Go make something awesome this week, and as always, stay rad. If you enjoyed this project, check out my resin craft playlist.